Behind the scenes, forbidden tension on a movie set. My name is Vanessa. I'm 28 years old, female, and I live and work deep within the belly of the beast, the film industry, specifically here in Los Angeles. It's a world of controlled chaos, relentless deadlines, and people who live and breathe storytelling. It's also a world where lines blur, pressure mounts, and sometimes things that shouldn't happen feel almost inevitable. This is about Mark. He's the director on the project I've been swallowed whole by for the last 8 months. He's older, maybe early 50s, acclaimed, intense, and possesses this aura. He walks onto set, and the energy shifts. He's not conventionally handsome and a movie star, way more rugged, with sharp eyes that seem to see everything, and a voice that can cut through the noise of 100-person crew, yet also soften to a low rumble when he's talking to you, and just you. My role puts me in close proximity to him constantly. I'm not an actress. I'm part of the creative team, working behind the scenes. So our interactions are professional, long discussions about script nuances, character motivations, shot lists, pacing. But from the beginning, there was something else humming beneath the surface. It started subtly. A look held a fraction too long across a crowded room. His hand on my arm as he made a point, the touch lingering for just a second longer than necessary. The way he'd angle his body towards mine during meetings, cutting out the rest of the world. I told myself it was my imagination, heightened by the sleep deprivation and the sheer intensity of the work. This industry grinds you down and wires you up at the same time. Maybe I was just projecting. But the feeling grew. It was a slow burn, a creeping heat that started low in my stomach and spread outwards. I'd find myself watching him when I didn't need to. The way the light caught his profile as he studied a monitor, the focused furrow in his brow, the unconscious habit he had of running a hand through his hair when he was deep in thought. My body would react, a sudden flush, a tightness in my chest, a prickling sensation on my skin. It was involuntary, undeniable. One night, we were working late in the editing suite. Just the two of us. The air conditioning had broken hours ago, and the room felt close, thick with the hum of the machines and the smell of stale coffee. We were reviewing a particularly challenging scene, dissecting every frame. I was sitting beside him, our shoulders almost touching. He kept pausing the footage, leaning closer to point something out on the screen. Each time he moved, I could feel the warmth radiating off him. His scent, something woody and a little spicy, filled my senses, making it hard to focus on the dialogue on the screen. He turned to me, his face close, illuminated by the flickering light of the monitor. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice softer than usual in the quiet room. I opened my mouth to speak, but for a second, no sound came out. My throat felt tight. His eyes, usually so sharp and critical, were fixed on mine, and for a moment, it felt like he wasn't looking at the editor or the colleague, but at me. Really seeing me. And in that look, layered beneath the professional intensity, I saw something else. Recognition? Or perhaps something deeper, mirroring the unexpected heat that was coiling tighter inside me with every passing second. I managed to stammer out an answer about the scene, my voice a little shaky. He nodded, but his gaze didn't waver immediately. He just looked at me. And in that prolonged silence, in the close heat of the room, the air between us felt thick, charged. It was purely a look, purely a moment of shared silence in a cramped space, illuminated by a screen. But my body was screaming. My skin felt alive, painfully sensitive. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure he could hear it. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the tiny gap between us, to just touch. I had to force myself to look away, back at the screen, feigning intense concentration as a wave of heat washed over me, making my cheeks burn. He finally turned back to the monitor too, but the atmosphere had shifted. The professional barrier, usually so solid, felt suddenly fragile, translucent. After that night, the tension was a constant companion. It was in the way he'd stand slightly too close when we talked, in the way his hand would accidentally brush mine when reaching for a script, in the shared, knowing glances that seemed to pass between us when others weren't looking. It was a silent language, a secret current running beneath the surface of our professional interactions, and it was intoxicating. It felt wrong, exciting, forbidden. He was my director. There were unspoken rules about power dynamics, about maintaining professional distance. But the pull was magnetic, growing stronger each day. My thoughts were consumed by him. I'd replay moments in my head, analyzing every word, every glance, every accidental touch. I'd lie awake at night, my body aching with a nameless longing, picturing his face, the intensity in his eyes, the roughness of his hand. There was another time, during a location scout. We were deep in the desert, miles from anywhere, exploring a potential site at sunset. The light was incredible golden, casting long shadows, paint the landscape in fiery hues. It was just him, me, and the vast, silent expanse. We walked ahead of the rest of the small crew, discussing the logistics. The conversation was entirely work-related, logistical, practical. But as we stood there, side by side, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the quiet felt profound. He turned to me, the setting sun behind him, his face shadowed but his eyes catching the last of the light. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at my face. My breath hitched. The air felt thin, electric. All the earlier tension, the hidden desires, the silent language, it all converged in that moment. The vastness of the landscape seemed to shrink, the world narrowing down to just the two of us. Every instinct in my body was urging me forward, to close the distance, to touch his face, to feel the warmth of his skin. My hands tingled, my lips felt sensitive, my entire body felt heavy with unspoken longing. It was a raw, visceral urge, stripping away the layers of professionalism, of convention. It was just pure, unadulterated wanting. He finally spoke, his voice low, barely above a whisper, though there was no one else close enough to hear. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" He wasn't talking about the sunset. I knew it. The way he said it, the intensity in his eyes, the slight catch in his voice. It wasn't about the landscape. It was about the moment. Us. The potent connection that had been simmering between us for months, finally boiling over in the quiet, empty desert. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, my gaze locked with his. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the overwhelming silence. I could feel the blood rushing through my veins, a warm tide spreading through my body. Every nerve ending felt exposed, quivering. My skin felt flushed, sensitive to the cool evening air that was just beginning to creep in. He took a small step closer. My breath hitched again. I could feel the heat radiating off him, even in the cooling air. His eyes dropped to my lips for a fraction of a second before flickering back up to mine. The unspoken question hung heavy in the air, thick with longing, with temptation. This was it, the moment. The culmination of months of suppressed glances, accidental touches, and simmering heat. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts, the potential consequences, the absolute wrongness of it, the career implications. But louder than any of that was the primal roar of desire, the desperate need to bridge that final distance, to feel his mouth on mine, to finally release the unbearable tension that had been binding me. My body made the decision before my mind could process it. I leaned in, just slightly, a silent invitation, a surrender to the overpowering pull. His eyes darkened, and he started to lean in too slowly, deliberately, as if acknowledging the weight and significance of the moment. The air crackled between us. I could feel the warmth of his breath on my face. My eyes fluttered shut, anticipation making me tremble. My entire being was focused on that single point of connection, the feeling of finally crossing the threshold. It felt like an eternity, that slow approach, every nerve ending screaming in delicious agony. The silence was broken only by the sound of our breathing, accelerating, mingling. I could almost taste it, the release, the surrender to the overwhelming temptation that had consumed me. My body felt molten, ready to yield, craving the touch, the kiss that felt both inevitable and impossibly daring. And just as our lips were about to meet, a voice called out from a little distance away, shatter the fragile bubble we had created. "Mark? Vanessa? You coming?" The spell was broken. We sprang apart as if burned, stumbling back from each other, the air thick with embarrassment and frustrated longing. He cleared his throat, his face impassive once more, the mask of the professional firmly back in place. I felt a cold wave of mortification wash over me, quickly followed by a deeper, more unsettling disappointment. We turned and walked back towards the crew, the vast, silent desert now simply the location we needed to assess. The conversation that followed was strictly about camera angles and lighting. But the memory of that moment, the raw intensity of the pull, the physical ache of unfulfilled desire, lingered. It wasn't a kiss. Not technically. Our lips didn't touch. But in that moment, in that shared leaning in the mutual acknowledgement of the fierce, potent desire that had been building between us, it felt like everything. It felt like a surrender, a confession whispered between two souls, drawn together by an irresistible current, in a world where such currents were dangerous. And that's the confession. Not necessarily an action, not something explicit by the world's standards, but the internal yielding. The acknowledgement that the temptation wasn't just acknowledged, but desired. The feeling of my entire body responding, craving, leaning in. The potent, undeniable heat that consumed me, making me forget everything else for a terrifying, exhilarating moment. It's still there, that tension, thrumming beneath the surface whenever we're together. Every glance, every touch, every quiet moment alone carries the weight of that sunset in the desert. And sometimes, late at night, the memory of feeling his breath on my face, the anticipation of that almost kiss, is enough to make that wave of heat flood through me all over again, leaving me breathless and achingly aware of the potent, dangerous longing that still lives within me. This industry is a strange thing. It creates stories on screen, but sometimes the most intense dramas unfold just out of sight, in the quiet spaces between the action, fueled by long hours, close proximity, and desires you never knew you had, waiting to be confessed.